Welcome back to the insanity. No, this is actually a lot of fun because there's so many things to do on this M715 all at once. It's a lot of fun. A lot of times you're waiting for parts, but you have to do A before you can do B, before you can do C. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. Last time we did the shackle flip, and I just showed you the reinstalled spring when we were done. I want to show you real quick how to rebush these springs. They're a brass bushing, and they really don't make them for these anymore, so you have to kind of improvise and go from there. That's where we're going to start. Doing some of these old Jeeps, they have a swing shackle and they have a bushing in them, and they're almost always worn out. I replace them here at my place. You can get the bushings from Alcan Spring. These are JHG bushing. They're a little bit long. You'll have to trim them once they're pressed in, but they're the correct size. They're chamfered just enough to get started, and you can see the pivot bolt, torque bolt actually fits right into it. So these are also knurled internally, which hold grease. I really like that. Now when I'm getting ready to press them on, I use a little bit of silicone just to lubricate. I don't like using grease when I'm pressing them in. It's just has too big a molecule. Now there's some other little tricks you can do. This is a big bolt. You can actually get a bolt longer than this one, run it in and start tightening it down and pressing it in. I actually use this bolt so my press has something solid that fits correctly. It won't wobble around, and it will press this in straight. I also have a piece of tube that I put on the bottom so I can press it a little further than flush. Once I get it all pressed in, I'll trim and file the edges down, and we'll be good to go. Take a little bit of time, make sure everything's lined up straight. Make sure the tube on the bottom is centered so that you know this will go through. Got a little bit of lubricant on it. And just nice and easy, start pushing it in. Once this bushing's down, ½ inch or so, you know it's going in straight. But what you don't want it to do is start flaring out on the top. That's one of the biggest reasons I use a bolt in there. I press one side all the way flush. That way I only have to cut off one side. Now I'll take my sacrificial bolt again, which I'm really not sacrificing this bolt. Clamp it in the vise. It gives me something to pivot this on. And I'll start with the die grinder, and then I'll move to the hacksaw because this shackle steps out and makes it a little more difficult. That's far enough there. Now I'll just finish cutting it. Just like that. Take a small file and just smooth the corner off of that outer edge. Make a little bit of a chamfer. That way there's no burrs sticking out. Take a flat file. And we're done. That fits just perfect. And that fits just perfect. So, shackle bushings complete. Got another little trick here. So I want to repaint where I've scuffed up this shackle. Slide a bolt in. Wrap the bolt with some tape. Push the bolt a little bit. Now I can repaint this, and I'm not painting the inside of the bushing. I'll do the same thing with the bushing on the fixed end of the spring, and I'm also disassembling, cleaning up these springs and putting them back together. All right, putting the springs back together. Got my centering pin, nut and washer. I always put some grease on these because they're going to be captured inside of a suspension component where water is going to get in. And when water gets in, they're going to start rusting and corroding.
But not only do they spawn this committee, how should this committee do? I wonder if Saul Weisenberger or Weisenheimer, what should they do? I wonder if former federal prosecutors or legal analysts out there, what do you think? Is this committee set up to get to the truth? Or just reinforcing your personal bias?
Cement these down. You don't have to crank these definitely tight, but you want them tight so that the springs compress. Clamps off. And there you go. There's quite a bit of work that you have to do to this engine compartment before you stuff an engine into it when you're doing some modernizing. First of all, I'm going to put some clutch linkage in. Not really linkage, it's a hydraulic clutch. And we're using the hydraulic assembly out of that 97 Chevy pickup. Cut the mount out of the firewall and adapt it to this. Kind of the same thing I'm going to do with the Hydro Boost brakes. I'm going to adapt it in from a later model and an earlier model at the same time and get those set up. That way we'll be able to work the engine around it and be able to center it where we want. So I took the hydraulic mount that I cut out of the pickup and then I welded it to a piece of exhaust pipe that was about the right diameter. After that, I took the original clutch pedal, filled in some of the holes and cut a new one. And I added a bolt with actual shifter bushings from an old Hurst shifter. I finished welding the tube to the mount and then mounted the shift bolt, and I assembled everything and tacked it into the firewall so I knew where it would sit. Keep in mind I adjusted the length of that tube so that the shift rod hit that hole in the pedal at the correct length. Then I welded everything in permanently. Now I still may have to create an adjuster of some sort, but we'll worry about that later. You can see how far I had to extend out the clutch mount. I cut this piece out of the firewall on that 97 Chevy truck I parted out, so a factory clutch master will set right in there, twist in, easy to find parts for, and this made it the exact length I need for using the original clutch pedal. Hopefully I have enough throw. We're gonna find out. With this little obstacle complete, now it's time to do a Hydro Boost assist. First part is making an adapter. Started off cutting a piece of rectangle 3/16 tube, but it wasn't quite deep enough for the adapter, so I welded a piece of bar stock in between it and then ground it down so that it was the right depth. I held this up against the firewall with the master cylinder coming through it, was able to mark a couple of the holes, drilled them, bolted it in, then I was able to mark the other 3 holes from the firewall side. Once I drill those, I can mount this plate permanently to the firewall, and I will have a Hydro Boost system. Not a dull bit. Once I was happy with how this fit and how it was going to be installed, I cleaned up all the welds, cleaned up all the drill ends, and then got it ready for primer and paint. Yes, this is primer. With it fully painted and installed to the firewall, and you can see now when I added that piece of bar stock, it allowed me enough room for wrenches to get in there and mount the Hydro Boost unit as well as it to the firewall. Now from the under dash side, you can see the original hole in the firewall and the pin for the master cylinder. Now this rod for the Hydro Boost is for an early Hydro Boost, which is a little bit longer. And I was going to just convert the master cylinder to a later model disc master, but then I came across a better Hydro Boost unit that was already disc. I just used an earlier rod in it, but it fit just perfect. I'm sure you've noticed that engine setting in here, but it's not really setting in here. I got everything bolted together where I can slide it into the frame rails to make sure I have clearance correctly, and then slide it back out. Eventually we'll put it in and build some engine mounts and make it permanent. But that way I can check clearances, make sure we're okay on everything. I picked up these little rolling engine stands off of the internet. They're pretty affordable. My reason for buying that little rolling engine stand is it sits nice and low. I can use my little seat stool and work on it as I'm not hurting my back on an engine stand. The other thing I liked about that stand is I can bolt the transmission to it, and then I can roll it underneath the Jeep, then lower the body down over the top and kind of get things centered and clearance stuff. That way, I know my master cylinder is going to fit. I know my Hydro Boost is going to fit, things like that. I can pull the engine in and out without actually pulling it in and out. Just roll it underneath and lower the truck. So you'll see the engine sitting there like it's in, but it's really not in there yet. We're just clearancing everything, I guess you could say. The steering boxes on these are pretty easy to convert from manual to power steering. Just use a J20 Wagoneer box, any of them will work, and it'll bolt directly in. Now there's a pipe brace that goes from the steering box mount over to the passenger side of the frame. I did have to cut that out to install the power steering box. That bar keeps the actual steering mount from getting torn off the frame, which Jeeps always had a problem with that if you recall the earlier Jeeps. But since I am going to be running Hydro Assist, which is hydraulic steering ram on the linkage on top of the power steering box, that's going to take most of the stress off of that steering box anyway. So I don't think I'll need any of those additional braces. For now, just getting the box in. A J20 steering box bolted right in. Now the bolts weren't quite as snug as I preferred. They were 7/16 and 1/2-inch bolts, but it did bolt in solid. And then once it was solid, I marked it and tapped it, and I'm drilling the ports in it for hydraulic steering assistance with a 7/16 drill bit. Trying to get this in focus here. There you go. So if you want to try to do these steering boxes yourself and you want to tap this tapered pipe threading, this is the measurements, a 1/4 pipe thread, and use a 7/16 drill. And your 7/16 drill is basically the size of the end, and then it tapers up from there. I usually only thread about, you can see the dirty threads, up to about here. And that'll give me enough bite for the steering lines on a Hydro Assist. One port has pressure when you turn left, the other has pressure when you turn right. All threaded, good location. You can see where the ports are on the steering box. For now, I just cap the ports until I'm ready to put lines on, and then I did install this J20 pitman arm. That way I can start building linkage to it. Next is to rebuild the steering shaft. I really don't see a need to build a new one. Rebuilding the coupler on my 715 steering shaft. I got the upper and the lower. The rebuild kit just comes with the little square slots, a new boot, retaining ring. It's from Crown Automotive. Here's a part number for you if you have to do one of these. The hardest part on rebuilding these is getting the boot over the pins in the upper shaft. So you kind of use a screwdriver and pry it around and over, and then put your square links on. And then you can finish up by putting the coupler and the retaining clips in. Once you're all together, this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to pull this back out until I get the engine installed. That's going to do it for now. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to do a little exit with the vendor show at Moab from Eastern Jeep Safari. I'm also going to throw in a few pictures of Sasquatch Jeep. Well, you guys know my Cherokee on the left, and the Wagoneer on the right, which is a four-door, is Skylar's, and it's named Sasquatch. It was a really cool build, and I'm going to do a quick walk around on that, and then we'll go to the vendor show. Well, I met Skylar. They built this Wagoneer. It's really fun when you can find someone else with this old iron. There's a setup a little different than mine, but kind of that same thought. Notice the running boards. And they're after my heart. They didn't just do coilovers, they actually spent some time setting up some geometry, which will make stuff work a whole lot better.
The batteries came before the Jeep did, I think.
Yeah.
So they got another version of an LS in here.
That's power steering for it.
Oh, that's power steering, yeah.
Skylar was part of the vendor show. Tuffy Boxes had him in their booth. He has about 6 Tuffy boxes in this unit, but his is set up a little different than mine. Mine's a little more rock crawler, his is a little more overland. But while mine was sitting outside by itself, I came back out to move it, and surprise! Well, isn't that cool? Someone gave me a duck. The vendor show on Friday gets pretty crowded pretty early, so going in the front door, there's already people standing around waiting to get in this place. This is the reason I come to Moab anymore during Jeep Safari. There's just too many people on the trails to four-wheel, but I sure like talking to all the vendors. And here's my club, Grand Mesa Jeep Club, pedaling our Rock Junction event. We do a lot of land use out there too. King, in my opinion, one of the best coilovers built. Another one of my wheelhouses, electrical alternators. We'll have a talk about that here soon. This is another local Grand Junction company. They build some very, very high quality bracketing, bushings, mounts, things like that. Never seen anyone break them. I kind of like these steps. I may have to think about something like this for the Army truck. They'll retract. I like seeing people coming out with good heavy-duty steering components. I see so many Jeeps wind up linkage on the trails. That adding big brakes is a plus too. Jeep Vixen. I always get my granddaughter stuff from them. It's cool stuff. My buddies at Next Venture Motorsports in Grand Junction just put out this new fender. It is stout. Yukon. A lot of good products. Spent a lot of money with these guys in the past. Forge Jokes. This is right up my alley here. Pardon. Stubbs, High Steer, Hines. Yep, this is my kind of booth. That's a must in any off-road vehicle. Mastercraft Bajas. That's what's in the Cherokee and in my black Jeep. If you have a bad back, or the kind of bad back I have, these things are phenomenally great. I can wheel all day and my back does not hurt.
I'll give you a couple minutes and I'll have everything set up.
Bare metal armor. You can cut to fit. Now let's go tour the outside. Another Jeep that's kind of right up my alley. Old iron, modernized. They built an entire new frame on this one, it looks like. Nemesis Body Armor. It's another Colorado company. Remember when they started 20 years ago. GMRS radios are really becoming the thing to have now. A lot better than CBs. You can get miles of reception. Another one of my favorite stops. More wiring.
It's gonna take us.
Trailer tie downs. Look like pretty good stuff. Eaton, another one of my favorites. Adventure Tool, they make those roll-up bags and they're made in Colorado. I like that. Overland trailer, complete stuff, camping. And this is where I would hurt myself and break my neck, so we'll just walk by this one. Hydro assist steering. We'll talk about some more of these here. Whether you like BF Goodrich or not, they put a lot of money into the off-road trail system and land use, so I try to support them where I can too. Well, that just made life easy right there, didn't it? Off-Road Design, another Colorado company. They built some really good 205 and doubler kits. The bracketing is a little heavy duty and kind of caters more to the full-size stuff, but their gearboxes are sure well built. This one did great right up until I broke the transfer case in half. Spent 4 hours last night pulling it out. Not a good day. This is becoming the normal setup out here. Long Jeeps with 1-tons in them. There we go. Got some serious like 44s here on this bad boy. During Jeep Safari, I always like stopping out at Potato Salad Hill. These guys are out there pretty regular, but there's always some fool trying to get up it and ends up on his lid. No action like that today, but stay tuned for the next video. We will have a bunch of video for wheeling in Moab, not just the vendor show. Thanks for watching.